So you probably know, if you watch The Wood Whisperer, that I like to make things with curves. I think curves are beautiful, and it's great to break away from the straight and square stuff that we typically see. And if you have curves, you need ways to finesse the curves. If you cut them at the bandsaw, kind of like these examples here, you can have a lot of divots. The bandsaw blade leaves a fairly rough cut. So it's nice to be able to smooth those out and also make it nice and regular so there aren't any major dips and valleys. There's a couple ways that you can do it. There are oscillating spindle sanders out there, which work pretty well. But even a spindle sander, as it's going around, can create divots. It doesn't create what I would call a regular curve, something that's nice and smooth and continuous. So I find one of the best things to use are these little flexible sanding strips. Right? And you've probably seen me use these before, but what I want to show you today is how you make them. They're so easy and quick to make. You could just make them on the fly, no trouble at all. Generally, for, I guess you call it general use, I like one that's about 4 inches by the full 11 inches. And we'll hold it on to the piece of material here using one of these spray adhesives like this. Here are the two examples. You can see really, really simple. You've just got a flat piece of material that's fairly thin and has some flexibility to it. The thinner you go, the more flexibility you have. Now, this is a sheet good. I think this is like an MDF core, very thin MDF core ply. This is actually solid wood. It's quarter sawn white oak that I drum sanded down, very, very thin. So it's nice and flexible with good spring back, but because the grain's running this way and it's really thin, over time, look what can happen. See, I've got these cracks in there. That's a darn shame right there, I'll tell you that. But you know, it still works. So over the years, I've kind of started to favor sheet goods for this because they really do hold up quite a bit better. But look at the structure here. There's just not a lot to it, right? You've got the flat board, you've got some handles, and that's about it. So let's make one. I've got two examples here. One is 1/4 inch MDF core plywood. And what I wanted to show you is that this thickness, that's a little heavy, right? Try to flex it, it's not really going anywhere. And even if you have, let's see, a shallow curve, like here, you can probably flex to the curve, but I gotta put a lot of pressure on there to get that to work. Okay, so 1/4 inch, you might think it's thin enough, but generally speaking, 1/4 inch, that's a hard sell. I don't know that I would use that for one of these. So I have a sheet of 1/8 inch plywood. 1/8 inch is much easier to bend, nice and flexible, and these are perfect. Right? So this is the material I'd recommend using if you're buying a sheet good. The other thing you need, just some scrap stock for handles. The dimensions aren't critical. I'm sure someone who's smarter at design than I am could come up with a really comfortable ergonomic handle, but honestly, I don't really care. These work just fine. All I would do is ease the sharp edges so that it's a little more comfortable to hold. The other thing you should consider doing is putting a layer of cork on it. Now, this is just a roll of cork. I got a whole bunch of this stuff that I bought from Amazon, right? Comes in a big roll like this. That's a great base for this thing because if you have just the sandpaper on wood, it's hard to describe, but the feeling isn't quite as good as when you have a little bit of a soft layer with some give between the sandpaper and your flat backing, right? So we're gonna basically, essentially, make a sandwich, starting with the plywood and the cork. So here I've got some spray adhesive. This is 3M Super 77. For this part, this is a permanent installation. You want to make sure that this cork doesn't go anywhere. So it's not a bad idea to use the highest tack you can get. And I believe there's the Super 90. It has a little bit more tack than this, but for the sake of getting this demo done, we will just use this stuff. Okay, a little bit on there. A little bit on there. Now normally you're supposed to give this like a minute to set up, if I'm not mistaken, just to make sure everything, it's kind of like contact cement in that way. You got to give it a little bit of time. But let's rush it.
You also have to be 18 to buy that.
You have to be 18 to buy that?
Part of me. Well,
really? That's weird. What are you, kids using it to get high?
Yeah.
Nice.
No, it's not nice.
I mean that in a sarcastic way. Cork is really the perfect material because it still has enough density to be nice, smooth, and consistent, but also just has just enough give to make it more comfortable for operations like this. Now here's the thing. Ideally, you're going to want to be able to take this paper off at some point, right? The paper is going to wear down. You don't want to have to build a whole new flexible sanding strip for that. So if you can, you may want to use the lowest tack material you could find. I don't know if they make something with less tack than this Super 77. If they do, that's the stuff you want to use. If they don't, here's my solution. Just use a little bit. The other thing you may consider doing is possibly putting some packing tape on here, then put the spray adhesive, and I think the bond between the packing tape and the paper won't be as good as the bond between, you know, a porous material like this. So there's other ways you could really make this a little bit more efficient or better. Let me do it this way. But essentially you want to be able to take that paper off again someday. And if, you know, worse comes to worse, you rip the cork off and you start over with more cork. Now, handles. CA glue is really all you need here, but if you've got the luxury of time, you could certainly use good old wood glue. A little bit there. And I've got a quick set activator here. Just drop it in place. Put pressure down, spread the glue around. So once those are attached, you should be able to test it out and see you've got a good amount of flex there. So let's head over to the vise, do a little sanding. All right, so using this is just as easy as it could possibly be. Put pressure in the middle, you want to grab the back, put your hand on the front, and you're sort of flexing it as you go. And go as fast as you want here. And what I'm going to do, just as an example, one of the tricks I love to do with this is take a little bit of pencil and you just mark lines all the way across. And now start your sanding. And as you look closely at the surface, you will start to see areas where the pencil remains. I've got a little spot here. There's another section right here. There's a couple more at the front and back. Those would probably go away with a little bit more work. But this helps you identify the spots that are too low. And sure enough, run your finger down, you'll actually feel those divots that match what you're seeing. So it's a combination of using the pencil marks and your fingers to tell where there's irregularities in that curve, right? And on this side, I've got a much more tighter radius. And this just goes to show you that there are limitations to this. If the material is too thick, maybe it doesn't bend well enough to that curve. In this case, there's a pretty good curve on here, but because this material is thin, check it out, boom, conforms right to the shape of that curve. Typically, I'll keep these with 80 grit, 100 grit, maybe even 120 grit. It's not usually something that I put finer grits like 180 and 220, because usually I'm trying to shape the surface a little bit to smooth it out. So to lower the grit, the faster that's going to go. I don't want to make it take longer. And then once I have the curve nice and regular, I've got other ways that I could sand it to make it nice and smooth up to my final grit. But quick, easy to make. I was on an episode of Rough Cut that's actually going to be airing on PBS this fall, and we had some curves to do, and one of the things we needed to do, we pulled the spoke shave off the shelf. We were talking about different options, and I said, do you guys ever use flexible sanding strips? And I guess they don't. So quickly on the fly with materials we had laying around, I made one right there on the show. And it just goes to show you, you can make them on the fly. Technically they're disposable, but if you put a little bit of thought into them, you can actually reuse these indefinitely, which is a great idea. All right, so that's about it. Flexible sanding strips. I don't do a project that has curves without them, and I highly recommend you make one. And if you have improvements on the design, let me know about it, because I've been using this basic setup for a long time, and I know there's ways you can improve on them for people who are much smarter than me. All right, thanks for watching.